leaving secretly.
Hi, Ketchup Crew. Hi, Trish.
Hi, Ketchup Crew. Hi, Trish.
Oh,
We recorded something for a meeting for work this week, and after we finished, I was like, "We've nicknamed the disembodied voice Trish," and my work colleagues were like, "Why?" I was like, "Oh yeah, okay. You're in the same space as my friends because we're all on Zoom, but you're not my people. Never mind."
I almost said hi Trish today when I was recording a podcast episode a few hours ago, and I was like, right, not hi Trish right now.
This is the first I have known what this hi Trish is about because I wasn't around when you made it up. I was like, I'm very confused. Yeah, it suits her.
Her name is Patricia, and she's very officious.
yeah. There's a podcast that we listen to that's like projected an entire terrible personality onto her that she's got some very gross ideas about like white farmers in South Africa being like the real victims of racism and stuff. It's like, Trish,
I don't like it. I reject that. That is not headcanon.
That's not your headcanon.
Rory, they are pretty much the entire what's it called? Objects of my racism.
Wait, what?
No, it's true. I'm massively racist against white South Africans. It's ridiculous. Like, I try not to be, but I am.
I know what you mean. Like, it's in the same mental category to me as like Argentine Germans and like Cuban expats in like Florida. Of like,
Bracken. You're right, Bracken. I'm trying, but it's hard.
Holy shit, we've got Jen. Jen's here.
And Carmen.
Hello. Look at this big crowd. Get you, Bracken, being a wonderful reader, reading us nice stories and people wanting to see you.
No.
Carmen, did you manage to catch up? I assume you did manage to catch up because you're here.
Just finishing. Oh no.
Yeah, I mean,
Jumpy Carmen again.
I haven't listened to the last 3 minutes, so there's something in.
Oh no!
Oh, shall we do a wee bit of a recap then?
Oh, you can't
what
hear
do
me?
People remember from last time? Go.
Oh God, it's been like a whole 4 days or something.
Oh, I only just finished it on Sunday, so I should be able to remember. Well, we
finished it 15 minutes ago and I forgot.
Oh yeah, with they're
just
going on an
about to-
adventure to the continent and we're shipping
going to
them.
Stuttgart.
That's the important thing.
Oh, yes.
So Felicity is in London. She's staying with her brother Monty and his boyfriend Piracy.
Who just hooked up in a bathroom.
What?
Who just hooked up in a bathroom,
Just
so
hooked
everyone
up in
knows.
a bathroom. Real classy. That's just how they roll. They've gone for a drink with the pirates from the last book, including Scipio and Ibrahim, his first mate. And Sim is a young lady who is also in the pirates thing. And she's like, you need to go to Stuttgart to get into this party, to be able to talk to this esteemed doctor and maybe get a job off of him. And I also need to go there for reasons. So we should go together and I'll pay the way and you should just not ask any questions about it. and Felicity was like, yes.
Also,
Except
she's
I will
hot
ask some questions. Yeah,
and she
she's
has
hot.
good eyes. I can't
Hungry
remember what the
eyes.
descriptor is.
Hungry.
Hungry.
Hungry eyes came up at least once.
But also she did say she had something to retrieve.
Yeah, she said she had something to retrieve from the Hoffman house, and she hates being asked why she hates London, and the answer is a resigned too many white men. And I remember that part very clearly.
That was my impression when I first moved there. No joke. Like, because because like New Zealand is in the middle of fucking like Polynesia, right? And like when I first moved there with my wife,
My
we were, like,
limelight.
walking around like Primrose Hill for some reason. I was just like, this is fucking weirding me out. What is up? And then like one person came out of a cafe to like serve some folks at a table. I was like, yeah, too many white people. That's what this fucking is. Right.
That's funny though, because after living in Fife, whenever I went to London, I was like, oh, it's so not so white.
That's how I
compared to
feel when
St.
I leave
Andrews.
Scotland and I go back to Wolverhampton or like down to London or somewhere. I'm like, oh my God, Scotland's so white. Like, it's so white.
It's so white.
It is really white.
Oh man, Duncan's here. Hi, Duncan. We have so many people today.
Yay.
I dropped in because I missed you all.
Oh,
Hey,
we missed you too.
have you been writing love poems about us again? Is that what you've been so busy with?
The voice poetry about you is not finished again.
We'll
What's
have
unfinished
the
one?
one you already wrote just like again whenever you want to read it to us.
Yeah, we'll just sob. It's fine.
Oh, sorry, Whip.
Okay. Y'all ready? Y'all ready for this adventure shit? If only I had a foghorn. Bow, bow, bow. Okay. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. I wait until the next morning to tell Monty I'm leaving. I hoped to catch both of him and Percy at the same time so that Percy could provide a buffer between my brother and me, but he departed early for a concert, and Monty woke late from a night at his casino, so he had his breakfast while I take luncheon, though they're both comprised of the same stale bread and coffee. He receives the news with indifference, most likely because all I say is that I'm leaving, with no additional details about where or with whom that departure will be made. From his perch upon the stove, rippling the surface of his steaming coffee with his breath, Monty asks, "So what are you going to say to Mr. Doyle? Should I be checking the post for a wedding invitation?" I drop a cube of bread into my coffee to soften it. "Actually, I'm not going to Edinburgh. I'm going to Joanna's wedding." "What?" He looks up. "How?" "That's not important." I think that's rather crucial information. I fish the bread out of my cup with a spoon. I can feel him staring at me, but I refuse to look. "The woman we had supper with, from Sibio's crew. She's helping me." "Why?" "Because I want to go to Stuttgart." "That's not what I meant. Why is she helping you?" He may not be the sharpest scalpel in the surgical kit, but he'll raise the concerns I have forced myself to ignore at the mention of reclaiming a birthright. So instead, I offer up a question in deflection. Why are you making that face at me?" "You're going to meet the doctor, aren't you?" "I am going because Joanna is my friend and I'd like to see her married," I say. Monty snorts. "Is she? I seem to remember you two shouting at each other at Caroline Peel's birthday party, and you making a very impassioned decree that you had no further interest in her company." I set my mug on the stack of trunks that serves as their table, a little harder than I meant to. A few drops slosh out of my hand. "Why are you being such an ass about this?" "Because this sounds like a terrible idea and I'm worried about you." "Well, that's not reason enough for me not to go," I say. "I worry constantly about you and Percy being pilloried or tossed in the Marshalsea, or you're setting your flat on fire because you don't know how to boil water, but I don't stop you." "I'm not trying to stop you from studying medicine, but I'm not going to pretend that I think this is the way to do it." "What other way is there?" I ask. I'm annoyed that my tone is rising while his is staying maddeningly even. I am not usually the first of us to grow agitated. I may not get another chance at this. But you're smart and you work hard and you don't give up. It's not a matter of if, it's when. He's not going to understand. It crystallizes for me in a moment. We may have grown up in the same house, two restless children with contrary hearts, but our parents sought to sand down our edges in different ways. Monty suffered under the hand of a father who paid far too much attention to his son's every movement, while mine was a youth of neglect, unacknowledged, unimportant. While Monty might have someday run the estate, the best that could be hoped for me was I'd leave it in the arms of a wealthy man. Had he stayed, Monty would have been that wealthy man to some other girl. That was the best either of us could hope for. We may have both left home, defied our parents and our upbringings in favour of our passions. But there are rocks in my road Monty can't understand how to navigate, or even conceive of being there in the first place. He drains his coffee, wipes his mouth on his sleeve, then says, "Stay a few more weeks with us, or we can find you a room somewhere and help you with the rent. Write to your Dr. Platt and see what he says. Visit a few more of the hospitals here." He bites his lip, and I know I won't like what he says next. "Just don't go to Stuttgart with that woman, all right? It's a bad idea." He's not going to understand. Better to pretend that I do. "Fine," I say. He looks up, and I wonder if my tone was curt enough to raise suspicion. I had tried to sound sincere, but had fallen rather short. "Really?" he says. "You agree with me?" "Of course I do. It's far more sensible to stay in London." "Yes!" He slaps a hand upon his knee. "Exactly, yes. Remember this day, Felicity, the day you agreed I am the more sensible out of the pair of us." "I'll mark it in my diary," I say dryly, then stand up to refill my mug. Hopefully the movement will disrupt the conversation enough that he'll truly think me a changed woman and we can move forward to something else. I shall not get Monty's permission to go to Stuttgart. Luckily, I don't need it. I continue the charade of planning to stay in London for the next 2 days before Sim and I are ready to depart. I let Percy suggest neighbourhoods in which I might look for a flat, and Monty make ludicrous propositions about how I shall break into the field of medicine, all the while gathering my meagre possessions in my knapsack under the pretence of tidying up the flat. It is a traditionally feminine enough activity that neither Monty nor Percy seem suspicious. Then, in the wee hours of the last day of the week, I get up after a sleepless night, dress silently in the dark and let myself out of the flat, my knapsack knocking against the backs of my knees. It will be 2 weeks of travel to Stuttgart, then the wedding festivities, provided we manage to weasel our way into the household. If the position with Dr. Platt comes to fruition, I don't intend to return to Moorfields, particularly not as a dependent house guest. Neither do I intend to return to Edinburgh. On my way to the harbour, I drop a 3-line missive at the post office to Callum, saying that I will be staying in London longer than planned, as my brother's syphilis/boredom is more serious than anticipated, leaving out any mention of the fact that I am going to the continent with a stranger to make a future for myself that will not include him. I have challenged fate to chess and am now attempting to keep all my confidence from puddling in my boots. What if I'm the only one betting on myself, because everyone but me can see I am not suited to play at all? You are Felicity Montague, I say to myself, and touch the paper in my pocket, listing my arguments, which, if all goes according to this impossible plan, will now be made in some variation before Alexander Platt. Dr. Cheselden's card is nestled in its folds. You have stowed aboard a ship and travelled 48 days with a single outfit. You are not a fool. You are a fighter, and you deserve to be here. You deserve to take up space in this world. The harbours are perhaps the vilest part of a vile city. The ground is slick with a foul combination of fish intestines, yellow spittle, gull droppings, vomit, and other fluids I'd rather not give too much thought to. Even at this early hour, the narrow docks are packed, every person certain their business is more important and therefore that snapping at others to get out of their way is justified. The wind off the water picks up a spray from the fetid Thames and spews it in my face as I search the crowd for Sim. I find her lingering near the end of the queue of passengers waiting to board the packet, and when she sees me coming, she steps into the line in earnest. She swapped her sailing duds for a muslin dress and unembroidered shawl tucked into the stomacher, topped with a heavy wool cloak. When I join her, she forgoes a greeting and instead says, "You look upset." "And your scarf has a hole in it," I snap. "Oh, look, we're all making observations." She doesn't reply, and perhaps I imagine her shifting her weight so she's facing away from me, but I press my hands to my face and give my head a good shake to clear it. "I'm sorry. I'm anxious, that's all." "About leaving?" "No, more about the fact that..." It seems unwise to tell her that no one knows where I am, so instead I say, "My brother's an ass, that's all." "So are mine." "Your what?" "My brothers. They're all asses." "Brothers plural." Had I been forced to grow up in a household of multiple Monties, I would have gotten myself to a nunnery just for some quiet. "How many have you got?" "4. "4?" I nearly swoon. "Older or younger?" "All younger." She grimaces. "All very loud." "Are they sailors too?" She nods, adjusting her grip on her bag. "Or they will be. The littlest one is only 8, but he'll be at sea soon. All my family are sailors." "What sort of sailors?" I ask. But Sim is already turned away from me, instead peering ahead to the front of the queue, where boarding cards are being checked before we're allowed on the deck, and though I know she's heard me, she doesn't answer. "That's fine," I say. I'm more annoyed at her silence than I likely should be, but in my defense, it has been an exceedingly stressful few weeks, and all my emotions seem to be operating at a higher level than usual. We needn't exchange any personal information. We'll only be together constantly for the next several weeks. I'd rather remain strangers in proximity. I push myself up on my toes, trying to see over the heads of the other passengers. "This is taking too long." "Maybe you're impatient," Sim says, still aggravatingly calm. "I am not impatient. I just know how long things should take." She blows into her hands. "Then maybe you're opinionated." "Well, my opinion is that you shouldn't pass judgments upon me." I cross my arms, turning away from her and the line, to instead look about the harbour. The sails of the moored ships flutter in the wind, smaller boats flitting between them with punters digging their poles into the bottom of the Thames. The ropes of a sledge crane nearby have snapped, and a merchant in a fine suit speckled with salt is shouting at a group of boys about the damage to his goods. Several planks down from us, there's a mess of raw fish spilled and trampled into the boards. A porter slips on the guts and drops the trunk he's carrying, grabbing onto a stranger behind him for balance. A stranger in a ridiculous hat. It's Monty. "Oh no!" Sim looks up from her hands. "What?" I pivot sharply, my back to Monty, though that will hardly be a hiding place for long. "My brother's here." "Is that a problem?" I didn't tell him we were leaving. I mean, I did, but he wasn't thrilled about that, so I lied and said I wasn't. But in the process, gave him just enough details that if I was to disappear in the middle of the night, he'd know where I was going." "And you disappeared in the middle of the night?" "Not the middle of the night," I protest. "The very early hours in the morning." Sim must spot Monty as well, for she ducks down at my side. "He's coming this way." "Of course he's coming this way. We're standing in line for the ferry to Calais, the first place to seek out your sister fleeing to the continent." "Come on." I pull Sim out of the line. up the dock and then out of sight behind the cargo dropped by the crane. I turned to her, my knapsack knocking me hard in the small of my back. What do we do? I don't know, he's your brother, she replies. He's also a human man, which I assume you have dealings with in the past. I pressed my face into the collar of my cloak, trying to examine the situation as though it were far more scientific than it is. The problem, avoiding Monty, who is paying careful attention to everyone boarding the ship to Calais. The resources at our disposal, little to nothing. Sim, me, my knapsack, which is mostly mittens and books and underthings, though I suppose throwing a book at his face and then running aboard would not be a bad distraction. That or just shouting something about menstruation and watch the entire dock erupt into chaos. It worked so effectively with the hospital board. We do not have time to wait for another ship. The sky is clear today, and winter weather is an unpredictable horse to bet upon. Tomorrow might be stormy, the channel so chopped up that no ships can break through it. The wind may be too strong, the air too cold, the water too treacherous with chunks of ice. Our window to get to Stuttgart is so narrow there's a chance we might miss the wedding, even with everything running on time. We have to be on that boat, whether Monty is in the way or not. We have to distract him, I say. He hasn't got a boarding card, so he can't follow us onto the boat. So we only need to occupy him long enough to make a run for it, and probably wait for the queue to die down. We'll have the best chance right as they're about to cast off. How are you going to distract him without him seeing you? Sim asks. We get someone else, I say, trying to sound more confident and not like I'm making this up on the spot. We pay someone. We can't afford to pay someone. How much money do you have exactly? She screws up her lips, then says very carefully, enough to get us to Stuttgart. Brilliant, I grumble. If you want to pay someone to go punch your brother in the face, that can be your share for dinner tonight. I don't want someone to punch him, I protest, then add, I mean, I do, but not right now. But we need some kind of distraction. Had I more time to think this through, I could certainly come up with a more elegant plan. But time is not on our side. I set out from behind our hiding place, Sim chasing me down with a yelp of surprise at my sudden movement. Away from the water and the ships, the dock is teeming with sailors and deckhands, some of them working, some of them huddled around smoking braziers. Braziers? Braziers. Braziers. Warming their hands over the flames. There's a bakery window selling cakes and mulled wine, the kind where you help yourself and drop some coins into the box on your honour. Having more crisis than honour, I take a mug without paying and start towards one of the clusters of men, but Sim stops me. Tell me what you're doing. Asking a man to distract my brother long enough that we can board the boat. I expect she'll argue. Not only is it vague, but most of my plans are talked back to by participating parties. But she just nods, then scans the group of sailors closest to us. You think that will work? I ask, my voice peaking at the last word. I am unaccustomed to being trusted so absolutely, and Sim is not someone I had expected to offer up that trust easily. It will certainly do something. Ask that one. She points to a man huddled alone against the wall of a dock office. I can smell from here that he's in his altitudes, or perhaps coming down off a binge the night before. His skin is withered from the sun. The strips poking out of the two short sleeves of his coat are covered in blue ink. Several other drawings crawl up from his collar and along the back of his neck. He does not look like the sort of man I want to trust my escape to. But Sim put her faith in me. The least I can do is the same. I stride up to the gentleman, careful not to spill my mug of hot wine. He looks up from his pipe as we approach, regarding us with a squint, though the sun has hardly risen. Good morning, sir, I say. I would like to offer you this drink. All right then. He's reaching for it before I finish my sentence, and I have to snatch it away, nearly dumping it all over Sim. Wait, first you must do something for me. Don't want to do anything for you, he replies, tucking back into his pipe packing. It's very simple, I say. Do you see that man over there? Standing by the dredge. He's short and has his hair cut, scars on his face. The sailor glances up. The one with the adorable hat. Damn it, Monty. Now I wish our distraction was punching him in the face. That one exactly. I need you to go over to him and pour this drink down his front, but make it seem like an accident, and then take a good long time telling him you're sorry and helping him clean up. Then I don't get the drink, the man says slowly. Well spotted, I reply, but you don't have to pour all of it. He stares at us, his head weaving, but I can't tell if that's because he's actually considering the offer or about to tip over. Then he hawks a ball of spit at the boards and sticks his pipe in his mouth. No thanks. I'm ready to move on and try another dafter sailor, but Sim steps forward. Come here, she says, crooking a finger at him. I want to tell you something. The man runs his tongue around his mouth, eyes flashing as he leans in. Sim grabs him by the collar and yanks him to her, a long black knife drawn from her boot and pressed against the soft meat of his throat. It is, if the throat is to be slit, not technically the best place to approach from. She'd have better luck going in from the side, stabbing into the carotid artery, then moving forward and down to the vocal cords to ensure silence and letting out both major blood supplies to the brain simultaneously. But I'm less concerned about that and far more concerned by the fact that first, Sim has a knife in her boot that she brought along with her for unknown but likely unsavory reasons. And second, she is about to use that knife to slit a man's throat. The sailor gurgles with fear, his eyes bulging in his head. Sim tosses back her sleeve, and I watch the man's eyes travel from her knife to her forearm. And somehow, he looks even more afraid. You see this, she says to him, and he nods. You sail under the bleeding crown and cleaver, he says, his voice higher than a moment before. Sim presses the knife harder, though not enough to draw blood. The man lets out a whimper. You know what that means, don't you? She looks pointedly at the ink on his neck, and he doesn't nod this time. The knife is pressed in too deep to risk any sudden movements. You do as she says, Sim said, then shoves him into the wall. She replaces the knife in her boot, then straightens and nods towards me. I don't know if she's expecting me to acknowledge my gratitude for her help, but my throat has gone dry. The instinct to step back from her, to pull away and run and unknot myself from our alliance rises inside me, primal and animal, the compass of my heart pointing straight to flee. That knife and that threat has confirmed the very likely truth that I have avoided looking in the eyes since Sim dropped her proposition upon me at the minstrel Nancy. I am likely taking up with a dangerous person who might hurt me or the people to whom I'm exposing her. If someone in the House Hoffman is to have their throat cut in their bed, she might take me as well, just to ensure my silence. Below us, the sailor asks, Can I have the drink? I take a deep breath and turn to him, trying to look less shaken than I am. You may hold it, but you may not drink it. And do not move until I signal you. A harbour bell begins to toll the hour, and one of the sailors on board our ship shouts down to the man on the dock, checking the manifest. Signal, I say, yanking your man to his feet and shoving him forward. Go make yourself a nuisance. Sim and I watch together as he makes a halting stagger through the crowd, tracking his progress with our own path along the dock and back towards the ship, ducking behind every crate and cart and barrel that will hide us. The gent moves much slower than I had hoped he would move. The harbour bells are finishing, and there's sailors about our packet are pulling in the gangplank, and Monty is starting towards the man at the end of it, like he might ask after the names of the manifest to see if I'm listed there. Our drunken friend beers sharply, raises his glass in the most theatrical of gestures, and pours it over a complete stranger, which certainly causes a commotion, though among the wrong people. I curse under my breath, ready to just run for the ship, but Sim grabs my arm. I flinch without meaning to, still thinking of that knife, but she's only directing my eyes. The commotion is close enough to Monty that he has to dodge out of the way to avoid the ruckus, and he glances over at our sailor, right as the sailor realizes his error and looks back at us as if we might be holding some kind of sign with printed directions of what to do now. Monty follows his gaze, and across the harbour, our eyes lock. My stomach drops. He starts towards me, and I'm ready to run, but then our sailor, clearly afraid of Sim's wrath should he fail, throws himself at Monty and tackles him. The sailor is a fair bit bigger than my brother, and the force of the hit knocks him more sideways than I imagine was intended, because both Monty and the sailor plummet over the edge of the pier and into the rancid, freezing Thames. That works, Sim says, and I feel her hand on my back, pushing me forward. Go, now. I almost don't. Partly because there is a chance real harm has been done to my brother, exactly the thing I had hoped to avoid with drink pouring rather than face punching as a distraction. And more than partly because of Sim's bright icicle of a knife and fear in the man's eyes when he recognized her. If you're going to run, this is the time. Do it before you leave London, before you're far enough from home that you never get back on your own. I glance down the dock to where a few kind souls are fishing my brother and our sailor out of the river. They both look unharmed, no visible blood or limbs pointing the wrong direction. They're sopping wet and shivering, but Monty will be a bloodhound after my scent as soon as his feet are on dry land again. Last chance, I think, staring forward up the gangplank. Last chance to run, to change your mind, to find another fight or surrender altogether and trade in whatever danger undoubtedly lies ahead for a cosy bake shop and a kind baker back in Edinburgh. But I'm not giving up on a spot with Alexander Platt. If I'm going to place a bet, it's going to be on me and my ability to outfox and outrun Sim, should the need arise. You are Felicity Montague, I tell myself, and you are not afraid of anything. And when Sim sprints down the dock and up the gangplank of the packet, I follow her. It's a day on the water to Calais. If the sky stays clear and the channel cooperative, we'll be in France by sunset. We don't take a cabin, and below deck is frigid and wet and smells foul, so we sit upon the benches lined against the rails, where the air is cold but fresh. The hood of my cloak refuses to stay up, and the wind has its way with my hair, twisting and whirling it out of its pins, and into thick clumps that I try to untangle with my fingers, even though I know it's pointless. At my side, Sim watches me struggle with a snarl at the back of my head, her own hand clamped over her headscarf to keep it in place. Do you want help? She asks. I'm fine, I say, then give a hard pull that pricks all the way to my eyes. The knot remains maddeningly knotted. You're going to rip your hair out of your scalp. I think I almost have it. You don't. Here, stop. She stands up, brushing her hands off of her skirt before climbing over the bench till she's behind me. Let me. I don't like this. I don't like turning my back to her, letting her put her hands in my hair, her wrist brushing my neck. I'm thinking of that knife against the sailor's throat and how easily it could be against mine at any moment, but especially this moment, with my eyes forward and my skin exposed. She's gentler than I expected. As soon as I think it, I feel guilty for imagining her to be rough and tug at my scalp. I can feel her hands combing through my ends, working with careful precision like it's a surgical thread she's untangling. I think I'll have to cut it out. What? I spring to my feet and whip around to face her. Her hands are still in my hair and I feel the sharp pull of leaping without warning. My nerves searing. It's just a bit of hair, she says. You won't even notice. I reach back and touch the knot to make certain she isn't bluffing. I can feel the impossible snarl. With your knife, I blurt before I can stop myself. Oh. She reaches down into her boot, slowly and with her eyes on me, like she wants to be certain I don't spook. It's not a knife, it's a marlin spike. She holds it up for my inspection, and it is indeed not a knife in the most traditional sense. It's a long, tapering spike with a chiselled end, made from black iron and rough along its edges. It's a sailor's tool, she explains, for sailing ropes. It hardly matters what it was called. Confidence is half of any bluff, and she has wielded it with the sureness and threat of a blade. You still could have killed that man in the harbour with it, I say. She looks sideways at me. I lift my chin. I want her to know that I know she's dangerous, and I'm here anyway. I want her to think me braver than I am, and just as dangerous as her. Could I? She asks. I'm not sure if she's asking sincerely or if she's testing me. I'm also not sure I should tell her. Had you pressed it down and hooked it below the clavicle bone, just here, I tapped my own over my cloak, it would have gone into his lungs, perhaps his heart, if you'd had the angle right. A punctured lung might not have killed him straight away, but he didn't seem like the sort who'd go running for a doctor. So it would have likely been a long, drawn-out death with a lot of wheezing and shortness of breath. And then there would still be the blood, and he could easily lose enough to prove fatal. Why are you looking at me like that? How do you know all of that? She asks. I read a lot of books. By that man, the one we're going to see. Among others. She rolls the marlin spike between her hands, the patches rubbed silver by her fingers glinting. You want to be a surgeon. A physician, actually. It's a different license and requires more... It doesn't matter. I sit down again and turn my back to her, tossing my hair over my shoulder, though the wind immediately yanks it back across my face. Go on then. Behind me, she lets out a small, breathy laugh. So spirited. I'm not spirited, I say, sharper than I mean to. Her hand, which I had felt hovering near my neck, jerks away at the spark in my voice. All right, easy. I didn't mean it as an insult. I cross my arms, letting myself sink into a slouch. No one calls a girl spirited or opinionated or intimidating or any of those words you can pretend are complimentary and means it to be. They're all just different ways of calling her a bitch. Her fingers tug at the ends of my hair. You've heard those words a lot, haven't you? Girls like me do. It's a shorthand for telling them they're undesirable. Girls like you. She laughs outright this time. And here I thought the spectacles were decorative. I twist around to face her. What's that supposed to mean? The only girls who talk like that are the ones who assume there are no other women in the world like them. I'm not saying I'm a rare breed, I reply. I just mean you don't meet many girls like me. Maybe not, Sim replies, fingering the marlin spike again. Or maybe you just don't look for them. I turn back around with more of a petulant huff than I intend. Just unknot my hair. There's a pause, and I feel her fingers against my neck, sweeping my hair over my shoulder so that she's holding the knot on its own. You're right, she says softly. Right about what? I've never met a woman quite like you. There's a sharp pinch and a sound like ripping cloth, and then she touches my shoulder. Here. I hold out my hand, and she drops the knot into it. No blood spilt. Thank you. I run my fingers through my hair, trying to find the shorter strands. I should wrap my hair like yours. It would be more practical. I'm a Muslim, she says. That's why I wear it, not because it's practical. Oh, I feel silly for not realizing it. Then wonder if I'm permitted to ask any questions on the subject, or whether that will only prove how ignorant I am on almost all matters of religion, particularly those outside of Europe. I heard Muslims pray quite a lot. Do you need... And I trail off with a shrug. When she goes on looking at me, I finish. Somewhere private or incense or something? She picks a few stray hairs off the end of her marlinspike, then holds them on her open palm for the wind to snatch. Have you met a Muslim before? Abraham is as well, isn't he? I say. From the Elftheria. Most of the crew is, she says. Or were born into it. Not the Portuguese men, but the lads from the Barbary coast. The Barbary coast pricks a vein inside my mind. I am not so foolish as to think there is only one kind of sailor that comes from the Barbary coast of Africa, but there is a particular sort of ship that makes berth there, and most of them are in the business of piracy. And most are not the sort of cuddly pirates with career aspirations that we found in Scipio and his men. I remember the fear in the sailor's eyes when Sim showed him her arm, too intense to be raised by a scratch or a scar. What's on your arm? I ask, before I can stop myself. I'm not certain if she can follow the complex footwork that led me to this conversational pivot, but I say, I'm not stupid. You showed that man something, and suddenly he was willing to help us. She doesn't turn, just darts me another sideways glance. I almost miss it in the fall of her scarf. It's a mark. Like a mole? I can hear her teeth grind. No, not like a mole. Is it a crown and a cleaver? She lets out a tense sigh, lips pursed so hard her skin pinks. I didn't think you heard that. How did you know it was bright in him? He's got ink on him. That means he's sailed where frightening things happen to honest sailors who cross that banner. Are you one of the honest sailors? I ask. No, she replies, and sticks the marlinspike hard into her boot. Oh. I turn forward. She straightens. We both stare out across the grey water, watching England disappear into the fog. And all I can think is that if she's not one of the honest sailors, it may mean she's one of the frightening things. Stuttgart. Our journey from Calais to Stuttgart is done in crowded diligences that hop from city to city along rutted roads. Close quarters are our only barrier against the cold. I may wear holes in my cloak for all the scrubbing up and down arms I have done, and I fear for my already deteriorating posture, for with every passing mile I feel more and more concave, my shoulders pulling over my knees, my back in a half moon, with my cloak tented around me. We sleep mostly on the coaches, only 2 nights in roadside inns, where Sim and I are forced to separate because of our respective skin colours. And while I'm opposed to inequality in all forms, it's the only time we have apart all the while we're on the road, and it's not unwelcome. Sim is a quiet companion. She doesn't seem to need the company of books or chatter to find diligence journeys bearable. She doesn't fill silence with conversation unless I initiate it. She lets me talk to most of the ticket clerks and innkeepers and diligence drivers, both of us knowing that most would be even less forthcoming to an African woman than they are to a fair-skinned one. And I have to field my share of questions about who I'm travelling with, and where's my chaperone, and why is it I'm going anywhere with just a maid hardly older than me. I can see the hard line of her jaw tense every time I step up instead of her, but neither of us says anything about it. When we reach Stuttgart, a quaint Germanic town with half-timbered houses crowded around squares, all draped in a gentle cloak of new snow. I get the Hoffman's address from the records office. Well, Sim finds a dressmaker who can fix me something that will be appropriate for wedding festivities, but in a forgettable enough colour that no one will notice repeat wearings. We start out on foot for the address several miles outside of town. The countryside is heavily wooded, but the austerity of winter has rendered the trees no more than rickety silhouettes, their tops wrapped in thorny mistletoe. We pass a farmhouse with a thin drizzle of smoke rising from its chimney and a stork nestled against its shingles. The thin layer of snow coating the earth has been trampled to mud and turned to ice so that the ground looks bruised and worn. It all seems a charcoal drawing on a landscape. How do you know her? Sim asks as we walk. Her breath is coming out in short white puffs against the air. Miss Hoffman, she qualifies, when I don't answer right away. Because so far, you've only spoken of the doctor she's marrying. We grew up together, I reply, for it seems the simplest answer. It does not satisfy Sim. Were you close? Close seems too small a word for my single childhood friend. Joanna, an only child with an absent mother and father often abroad, and I with parents who I was sure sometimes forgot my name, found a whole world within each other. We tore up the forest between our houses, made up stories about being explorers in faraway corners of the world, foraging for medicinal plants and discovering new species that we would name after ourselves. She was famous naturalist Sybil Glass, and I the equally famous Dr. Elizabeth Brilliant. Even as a youth, my imagination was very literal. Then Dr. Bess Hippocrates, when I started reading on my own. Then Dr. Helen von Humboldt. I had a hard time committing to a make-believe persona, but Joanna was always Miss Glass, the fearless adventurer who often had to be saved, usually from grievous injuries her bravery and fondness for risk brought upon her by my level-headed doctor, who would then advise her to act with more prudence before they set off on their next wild adventure. She'll remember me, I say to Sim. I'm just not sure Joanna will remember any of those childhood games. They're all obscured now by the long, lean shadow of our sour parting. The 3 years that stretched between them and now feel impossibly vast as we turn up the drive of the house. House Hoffman is painted the bright pink of grapefruit pulp, with gold and white trimmings and shingles in the same shades capping it like a crown. It looks made of cake and frosting, an extravagant birthday treat that will leave your teeth aching from the sweetness. The drive is split by a fountain, frozen in repose, the hedges rimming it bare as the trees, but still imposing. It has been so very easy to divorce Joanna from this scheme. I had enough to think about aside from her. Alexander Platt, whatever the crowning cleaver upon Sim's arm means, why she is so desperate for a spot in his house. But as we climb the drive, knapsacks thumping in time against our backs, I think, for the first time, of the next few weeks in their entirety, without skipping over the part where I must see Joanna again. I don't know what I'll say. I don't know if I want to apologize or if I want her to. We are a bedraggled pair that pulls the bell cord, far rougher around the edges than is likely to create a believable image of a rich English girl come from boarding school to her best friend's wedding, attended by her maid. What's your surname again? Sim asks, both of us staring at the door. Montague. Why? I'm going to introduce you. No, let me do the talking. It makes more sense. She breaks off as the door opens. A butler greets us, a tall, aging gent with more hair in his ears than atop his head. He looks wrung out and put out and like he'll fall for nothing. I have learned that men respond best to non-threatening women whose presence and space in the world does not somehow imperil their manhood. And so, as much as it pains me, I put on a smile so big it hurts my face and try to think like Monty, which is infuriating. Be charming, I tell myself. Do not scowl. But when his eyes meet mine, I'm gut stuck with sudden fear that we shall be foiled before we're even permitted to cross the threshold. I shall never meet Alexander Platt. I shall never escape Edinburgh and Callum and a future filled with bread and buns and babies. I shall always have to push myself aside to make room for others in my own life. But then I will also never have to face Joanna Hoffman. The scales tip. Good day, I say, right at the same time Sim does. We glare at each other. The butler looks ready to shut the door in our faces due to lack of communication and decorum, so I say quickly, my name is Philistine Montague. I'm here for the wedding. I was not told to expect any more guests, he says. I swallow. My mouth has gone very dry, as if all the moisture in the body was slowly sucked from me by the long walk. Reaffix my sweet, innocent slip of a thing face, which uses muscles that have grown stiff from lack of practice, and Lord help me, the actual phrase, what would Monty do, manifests like an unwanted houseguest in my mind. Did my letter not arrive? Joanna, Miss Hoffman, and I are good friends from childhood. I grew up in Cheshire with her. I've been at school not far from here, and I heard she was to be married, and I simply had to come. She's the best friend I've ever had, and I couldn't miss her nuptials. Perhaps it was not the wisest play to show all my cards immediately upon arrival. I have just offered up the entirety of the story I am reliant upon to get us a place in this house in a single mouthful, and I'm not certain he's swallowing it, so I tack on, for good pathetic measure, did the letter truly not arrive? Rather than answering, the butler simply repeats, Miss Hoffman did not inform me to expect any more guests. Oh, my heart hiccups, but this fight is far from over. I select the next weapon from my feminine arsenal, the damsel in distress. Well, I suppose I could just go back to the town and wait to see if you receive the letter. I heave the weariest sigh I can muster. Zoons, it was such a trip, and my girl has been limping on a twisted ankle since Stuttgart. I gave Sim a nudge, and she obediently begins rubbing her ankle. It's a far less convincing performance than mine, but I turn back to the butler and attempt to bat my eyelashes. It must come across rather more as trying to rid my eye of something irritating, for he asks, Do you require a handkerchief, madam? I was hoping to elicit pity, but this ghoul of a man seems to have not a single drop of charity to be wrung from him. Simpering seemed the best method. Simpering and simple, my two least favourite things for a woman to be, but the two things men like most. To approach a gentleman such as this fuzzy-eared sod, but he's so obviously unmoved, and also I think I shall faint from the effort if I'm forced to remain this repressed. So instead, I change course dramatically, and rather than playing my brother, I play myself. I stand straight, with my hands upon my hips, drop my dimpled smile, and adopt the tone I found most effective in ordering Monty about on our tour, when he was dragging his feet and moaning about his poor toes as though we had some other choice of how to travel, and were simply holding out on him. Sir, I say to the butler, we have come a great distance, as is obvious if you care to make any observation of our current state. I am exhausted, as is my lady, and here I am telling you, my dearest friend in the world, I am unintentionally escalating the significance of my relationship to Joanna with each retelling, but I press on, is to be wed, and you would not even allow me to cross through your door. I demand first an audience with Miss Hoffman so that she can make judgments for herself of our acquaintance, and should she decline to allow us to attend her wedding, you can at least have the decency to put us up for the night. Which cracks him for the first time. The guardian of the grapefruit house rendered stunned and mute by how firmly and confidently I spoke to him. Sim, in contrast, looks rather impressed. Then the butler says, I believe Miss Hoffman is dressing for dinner. Zoons, really? I say before I can help it. It's hardly mid-afternoon. The butler either chooses not to comment on it, or his ears are encased in hair. He does not hear my aside, for he continues. I will see if she is available for an audience. Thank you. I take 2 fistfuls of my skirts and push past him into the entryway, thinking it will make me seem as impressive and authoritative as my tone led him to believe I am, only to then have to stop dead and wait for him to lead, as I've no idea where I'm going. He doesn't offer to take my winter things. He doesn't seem to think I'll be staying long. Sim appears at my side and makes a big show of leaning over to unfasten my cloak, while really using it as an excuse to hiss into my ear. No snapping her head off, Crocodile. You're friends, remember? I'm not going to be cross with Joanna unless she's as much of a stooge to me as her butler was, I reply, then add, against my better judgment, but compelled to defend myself. And I'm not a crocodile. If I am to be an animal, I would like to be a fox. Well then, Foxy. She whips the cloak off from around my shoulders, then smooths the collar of my dress, her hand lingering on my breastbone. You've got only one chance at this, so make it count.
Yay.
I love this book.
Yeah. And they're off.
I'm enjoying it far more than the first book.
Really?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
That's because Felicity's kind of badass and like you might want to hang out with her sometimes, and Monty you wouldn't want to hang out with.
I absolutely want to hang out with Monty, I'm not going to lie.
I was hoping Monty was going to get punched in the face for distraction, because he's so good at coming.
Well, he got chucked into the Thames instead, which is in some ways worse.
Also lost an ear.
He did lose an ear, that is true. Well, lost the hearing.
It's a different kind of punch to the face, you know, a very splashy, wet one.
Yeah. And in this book, he has been quite kind to Felicity in his own, like, incompetent way.
True.
He has grown as a person.
Jen,
you're muted.
I was just going to say, I think he tried. Like, I think that Monty has, in like the little bits that we've seen in this book, done the best of his ability to be kind.
Yeah, with a couple of nudges from Percy.
Percy's so good. He's such a nice boy.
Percy.
Also, I'm totally catching up with the ships, but the moment Sim existed in that scene, I was like,
yeah,
something's gonna happen here, or I want something to happen here.
I think that was everyone. I'm so into that ship. And I love Sim not even pretending to be one of the good ones. She's just like, no.
Yeah, yeah. She's not being around the bush about it, is she?
I appreciate how both of the main characters, as far as women go in this book so far, are really unapologetic about who they are.
Yeah, yeah, I really like that. Well, Felicity has definitely like trying to use her wiles on the butler, who is completely unmoved. Like she's not also like attempting that.
I like that she then gave up and she was just like, no, this is outrageous. Why haven't you let me in yet? Tactic of just treat the world as you think it should react, and it's sometimes so shocked that it just reacts in the way that you've sort of pushed it to.
Also, psychologically, sometimes after someone says no a bunch of times, they'll feel bad and eventually say yes. So I think after all of the no's to everything else, and then she shocked him with confidence, like, what else is he gonna say?
That's very like I'm glad to hear that you will take somebody's no and not try and manipulate them into some
I mean, business school, am I right?
yeah.
Like literally all I learned was how to turn no's into yeses or how to build little yeses into big yeses. It's
gosh.
pretty much like marketing is teaching you to manipulate people.
What a surprise.
Yeah. Fascinating, but like horrific.
I really want more so we can get this definitely going to be cringy and terrible interaction, but I suppose I'll wait till tomorrow. Actually, I won't wait till tomorrow. I'll be catch-up crew tomorrow, so.
Oh, you will. How do we record things if you're not going to be around? Should we just record to cloud or? Okay.
Yeah, if someone logs in as Frankie and records to cloud, then I'll fix it.
Alright,
Unless
I
someone
can
wants to
Frankie.
download to local and then upload to YouTube. But if no one's got time to upload to YouTube, then just do it to cloud and I'll pick it up on Thursday.
Lyric, are you going to be around tomorrow night?
Yes, I can cloud it, but I will not be around afterwards for long, so I won't have time to YouTube it.
No problem. We are going to be adventuring.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
I
Where are
have
you adventuring? Sorry.
We have our D&D session and everything has just gone horribly wrong because we were tricked. So
We were
See?
fucked up.
so
Neville
fucked
knows
up
that
so
we're in
hard.
Oh, catch-up crew, before I forget, if anyone in the catch-up crew feels like joining book club is happening on Friday, a week since our last session. So we're gonna meet at Storytime time again, and we wrote somewhere the end of the part that you're supposed to read to. So message me or Andrada or Storytime please find it, because I don't know off the top of my head.
I accidentally finished the book and then discovered it's the first of a trilogy.
Oh, did you not hear Katie's warning? I'm so sorry.
I
And the
think
rest of
maybe
them
I did,
are-
but I forgot.
The trilogy is not yet finished. He's barely writing the second book now, so we're all waiting.
Yeah, so we're all mad
That's
about it.
even worse. What the fuck?
Yeah, why would Frankie even recommend this to us knowing this was a potential?
So is this still that book about something gray?
Yes,
Yep.
Oh, so you're enjoying it?
it's really good.
Is this Frankie's version of an ultimate cliffhanger? Just like a fuck you cliffhanger, like the book's not even written yet.
That is the kind of power
I
move
don't
would
know
expect.
how this one. Oh, sorry, Carmen, you go ahead.
I was just laughing.
Oh, I don't know how Shades of Grey ends, but this other book that I'm reading that turns out to be a trilogy, the first book ends up with a big fucking cliffhanger and a to be continued.
Hate that. I want
And
closure.
I'm so glad that I started reading it years after I bought it, now that the other two books are in existence.
Nice.
Wow. I hadn't even got round to looking up the second one. So I guess now I know.
I shall endeavour to make it on Friday. I have missed the last two. I'm definitely going to try and make it on Friday.
Well, maybe after this one, we'll all just finish the book. I don't know how much is left after that, but it is really hard to stop reading, and I kind of want to just fucking finish the book if everybody else is on board with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so after Friday, we'll do whatever the line was for Friday, and then we'll finish the book and meet 2 weeks later.
Oh, I might be on holiday.
No. Okay, well, we can figure out a different date for the last session too,
Right.
because usually it's Megan who can only come on Fridays, and Megan is gonna be in the UK then. Hi, Drew. So maybe another day might work.
We should do a goodbye to catch up crew, but before then, we don't, I think, have anyone hosting poetry this week. So if anyone is around and has a theme idea or wants to host. Oh, also, my COVID test came back negative. So
Yay!
I just have a cold and feel a bit rubbish, but it's not COVID, so that's good.
Hooray for
Oh.
not COVID. And Rory, were you raising your hand or stitching about poetry?
Oh, I'm just stitching right now, but
Okay. Your arm went really far up when Bino was talking about hosting, so I figured it was okay.
Boundary
Cool. So
Patrol.
Boundary Patrol, that's the line for the next session. Andy.
Are we
That
reading
is
up
the
to and
last
including?
chapter to read
Okay.
until Friday. Because we did one chunk, then double chunk, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
Andy chunked the book for
Bound-
us.
Boundary Patrol included Snowball Lightning.
So before we say goodbye to the catch-up crew, I wanted to see, like, whether there's anybody who wanted to do any more readings next week, or whether you guys wanted me to keep going with Petticoats and Piracy.
As long as you're around to read it, I will listen to things.
So I've just got my rota out, and I am available if you guys want me to continue.
Yes,
Also,
please.
Yes, please.
Okay, cool. I just don't want to like hog the space, you know. But
We're your biggest
we want
fans.
you to hog the space.
Yeah.
hog away.
Please hog it and let us just bask in your presence.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. You can bask in my presence.
Yay, that's so exciting. Okay,
Very happy about this.
wise words for the catch-up crew. Catch-up crew, you deserve to be here. Take up all of the space.
Catch up crew, we love you. Thank you for sticking around for things.
and get yourself a marlin spike. That sounds
Get
like
yourself a
good Christmas.
marlin spike.
And always clarify which funny cute hat you mean. Okay.
Goodbye, we love you.
Love you.